You're listening to Let's Talk About Fatherlessness with host Sean Teis, where we talk about leading fatherless families to the Heavenly Father.
Hey, my name's Sean Teis, and you're watching Let's Talk About Fatherlessness. Excited to have you back with us. I have a great friend with me today, Dustin Alley. I've been to his church, actually two of his churches, I've been able to share our ministry at, and just excited to have you with us, Dustin.
Yeah, Sean, man, glad to be here, bro. And yeah, two churches, one down in Arizona and one in Bristol, Connecticut. And so we really try to get you all over the map there.
Exactly. When I first came to Arizona, I didn't know you. I mean, I met you as a youth pastor. You were helping us get our RV park. We were on our Hope for Fatherless America national tour, traveling around, and you helped us out. And we kind of struck up a friendship there and got to know you guys. Went to Chick-fil-A with your family, and you guys had an awesome family. And then we got to go to Connecticut with you, and got to just experience an amazing thing in Connecticut. You had a hurricane come through, right? Or tropical storm.
Yeah. And by the way, that tree that fell down while we were watching it at my house, still there. We're not moving it. In fact, I found out it's not even in my property. It's my neighbor's property, which I'm very thankful for. So now I don't even have to worry about it.
That is awesome. That's awesome. So we've had some experiences together, right? We hung out at that Mexican restaurant.
Man. Yeah. And when we showed our appreciation to missionaries, to you guys, and had you out for dinner, you guys remember that? We got to eat Mexican food in the back alley of the Mexican restaurant. Like, we didn't even take you inside. That was honestly high class. And so...
Hey, well, you guys have a bricks and minifigs there close to your church, and my kids love that. So that
we do
that definitely made up for it. So and you gave us a place to stay. We were in an RV, and we didn't want to stay in that hurricane for the tropical storm hurricane thing. And so that was, which one was that? Which hurricane was it? Do you remember the name?
I don't remember the name. I just remember what that was. That was 2020, wasn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, I think
it was 2020. And then, because you were supposed to have come up earlier in the year for a missions conference, and we had to go digital on that one. And then you ended up coming up later in the year. And it was in the back alley there. And then the kids at Bricks and Minifigs, it almost shut down twice since you've left. And it's been either bought or just reopened, or they've trying to revitalize it. I think I'm going to put them in touch with a church revitalizer because they need some help there, but that's a whole nother story.
Nice. That's awesome. And I know you're a Broncos fan, right?
Absolutely.
You're having a rough year.
And I saw your Steelers helmet there. And so I wasn't going to say anything, but it's,
sorry. I had to bring it up.
what is it? It's a rebuilding year.
Yes.
We've been rebuilding for a while. And we went through, Super Bowl 50 was our claim to fame. And then the head coach had a heart attack. And since then it's been a coaching and quarterback carousel. Oh man. Yeah. And then this year it's like, okay, we got Russell Wilson last year. All right. It didn't pan out. Wait, we have Sean Payton now. Oh yes. This is going to be great. Wait, you hired our former head coach to lead the defense. Okay. All right, Sean, I trust you. Okay. All right. And then here we are 1-4. So Broncos fan. Yay.
Hey, I'm a Steelers guy, and we're barely squeaking by. And our defense is winning our games. But anyway, we didn't come on here to talk about
championships, though. So you got
true.
Something else to talk
about.
We'll do this another day.
That is true. But it's so great to have you. And I wanted to have you on to really. I know when we met, you shared your story with me, and that's what we talk about on here: fatherlessness. And one of the things I love to capture is stories of transformation, stories of hope, because so many fatherless individuals, they end up becoming a statistic, and they go down a path of, honestly, a lot of times is destruction. And so we try to share stories of inspiration, saying, hey, this is what you could become if you give your life to God, if you follow God.
Yeah.
And so as I was thinking about, who should we have as other guests? And you just popped in my head. I was like, I need to capture Dustin's story. And so tell us first about where you're at. Like, what are you doing now with your life? I know you're successful. Tell us some of those things, and then we'll dive into your story.
Well, you're very kind with your words. The things I'm doing now, I am pastoring at Liberty Baptist Church in Bristol, Connecticut. I'm married to my high school sweetheart. We went to different high schools. That's how we remain sweethearts. And we have been married for 17 years this year. We've got 3 kids, 12-year-old boy, a 8-year-old boy who turns 9 in January, and a 7-year-old girl who just had her birthday. I'm pastoring. I am pursuing my doctorate in leadership from Liberty University. I have one more class left before I'm officially considered a doctoral candidate. Right now it's just doctoral student. I am hosting the Men After God podcast and have started the After God movement, where we help men achieve success with a thriving faith and family. We have a weekly show with interviews right now. We've got a Facebook group, facebook.com/group/Men After God, and you can jump in there and we're doing weekly coaching content now, just really connecting with guys. Our beta group coaching program launches as of this recording. It launches tonight. And so we're excited about that. Working on a book that talks about becoming a man after God and the 5-pillar framework that God kind of gave me after I just crashed and burned is the best way to say it, and kind of recovered from that. I want to pass that along to other guys, and so that's what I'm doing right now. Not much.
You're a little bit busy, right?
A little, yeah. I also get to coach my son's little league baseball team. Awesome. That's been a great time. And then other kids are involved in sports, so I get to be dad and just go sit and watch and really enjoy that time. Yeah.
And I've always enjoyed your energy ever since we've met. And when you were in Yuma, and you can tell that you have that military background, right? You have that energy and that organization mixed together. And tell us about that. Tell us about your military career.
Yeah, sure. So, we're kind of working in reverse order here. So I'll just go right after high school. I joined the Marine Corps. I graduated in May of 2006. By July 23rd, I was in boot camp. And then that October, I graduated from there and got married to my wife a couple months later in December. But my time in the Marine Corps, I was an air traffic controller for 9 years. I did 2 tours in Afghanistan. Was blessed to never see combat or anything. Made some good friends and some really poor choices early on. But it was my first trip to Afghanistan that God used to help kind of bring me back to Him. You mentioned the organization. The funny thing, Sean, when you first met me in Yuma, I was an assistant pastor at Chad Matheny, which I love dearly, and I'm so thankful for him. And I was the administration guy. I was the one that would organize the events. I'd put everything together. I'd contact people. I'd do all that. I have found since stepping into the lead pastorate role, I can't do both. And so that organization side of things, like, it's still there, but for the execution of it, I really lean on other people. But the Marine Corps, again, taught us that in delegation and various different things. And I've learned it a lot more over the years, but it was the Marine Corps that I leaned into and God used to help really change my life trajectory. People I met in there, I would not be pursuing after a doctorate if it wasn't for Corporal Joshua Summers, who was counseling me within my first couple months at my duty station. And he asked me, so what are you going to do after the Marine Corps? I said, well, I'm going to be an air traffic controller. He said, yeah, so is that guy. What's going to make you different? Like, I'll have experience. He goes, so does he. So what do you do? I'm like, I don't know. He said, you're going to get a degree. I'm like, no, Josh. Corporal Summers. I joined the Marine Corps so I wouldn't have to go to college. I never wanted to go to college. I was going to go to the Marine Corps, retire out of there at 37, which I'm about a year away from. And that was it. That was my life. And he said, nope, you're going to go to college. And so I ended up taking my first class, which is like Introduction to Computer Science. They taught me how to use Microsoft Office Suite. I did well. And now here we are 2 degrees later pursuing after a doctorate. But God used the Marine Corps and my time there to really change the trajectory. Again, in Afghanistan, I met a man who was a Christian. We were doing 12-hour night shifts, and I was going to be taking over for him. So this was as I was transitioning in, he was transitioning out. And he's witnessing to me, doing what a Christian should do. And I can't remember his name. I wish I could find him and just like, hey, I want you to know what your conversations did to my life. But he got me thinking about it. And I pushed back. Like at the time, Sean, I mean, as agnostic as I could have been, I'm pushing back. I want to see all of the biblical writings. I mean, I had watched Da Vinci Code, so I was pretty much an expert. And so knew that I could ask these things. And he didn't have an answer for me. And but ultimately, again, it was me needing to find my faith in Jesus. And then while I was there, 12-hour night shifts in the dark, alone in a tower. I had a lot of time to think. And I had access to the internet there, and I got to spend time, researching different stuff, watching a lot of movies. This is not an admission of guilt, but if there is a desire to find out how all the piracy happened in the the 2000s, 2010s, it was probably because of the military, but that's another story. And so Kazaa and Pirate Bay were our friends. But while I was there, I watched National Treasure and got turned on to Freemasonry. And I was like, oh, I want to check into this. Well, Freemasons require you to believe in God. And it was that I said, well, I don't really know what I believe about God. I pushed against it growing up, or I pushed against it at 13 years old and kind of never explored it for myself. So it was at that point I ordered my first study Bible. I read the book of Matthew for the first time, and that was 2012. And within 3 years, I'm in full-time ministry. Within a year, God had called me into ministry. I mean, it was just a whirlwind. But that's kind of my Marine Corps time there and how God used that to just change the direction of my life.
Wow, that's great. I love how God worked on you and how you were able to overcome and to do that. Let's go back. Let's go back to your childhood. You know, we're kind of building up to that. Tell us your story. Tell us how you grew up, you know, what happened with your dad, with your mom, and all those things.
Yeah, sure. So I grew up what I call backwoods Baptist, and I love the people in the church that I grew up in. They love Jesus, and I say that they love him as best they know how. I mean, no disrespect when I say that, but growing up, you know, it was very Baptist-costal, very emotionally driven, and about a mile wide and an inch deep when it came to biblical knowledge and things. At least that was my perception of it. I know there were people there that loved the Lord, read their Bible, and they knew theology in ways that I didn't. However, so growing up there, religiously speaking, Christianity was kind of a Sunday thing. We did go on Wednesday nights for kids programs and stuff like that, but what was happening at home did not reflect what was being taught, expected, or, you know, shared at church. And so that had a huge impact. But my family, my mother and father, they got divorced between first and second grade. And that had a major impact on me. I don't remember how long it happened, but I know in second grade, I had huge issues going to school. Like when I would go into school, my mom would have to stop and wave at me, and I'd have to see her through this set of windows as I'd be walking to class, or like I would break down crying. And I did that, you know, a number of times in second grade, and the teachers knew things going on and stuff. But and I was in public school. Kids weren't always the nicest when the second grade boy comes in crying, you know. But so that had a major impact on me. They divorced. You know, there's a number of things I've heard over the years, but ultimately, my dad, who I now have a great relationship with, we text often and talk quite a bit. But he's admitted these sins, he's confessed them, he's asked for forgiveness, and I've forgiven him for them. And that was a very freeing experience for me, and we can get there later. But during this time frame, he was an alcoholic, a drug addict, and pursuing after things of the world and the flesh. And so, that kept him away from me for a while. And so that was second grade. Second through fifth grade, my mom and I lived alone. She was a single mother, and I was blessed and cursed, if you will. I'm an only child. And then the youngest of two grandkids, Sean. Do you know how spoiled I was? Like, it wasn't good. And I love my grandmother that spoiled me and my mom, but I was spoiled. And that's, again, a discussion for another day. But about middle school, fifth, sixth grade, my mom meets my stepdad. My stepdad's name is Rob, and he's a big teddy bear. And I wrote about him in my book. I wrote him on my dad as well. And I've asked him about sharing this information. He said, as long as it's true, you can share whatever you want. I said, okay. And so whenever my mom had met him, he had just got out of prison for 7 years because he'd stabbed a guy in a bar fight. And, so you hear that and you're like, oh, wow, like what type of person is this? He was a guy that got drunk and was the wrong place, wrong time. But you get to know him, and he's loving, he's caring. Multiple times we've picked up guys off the street. I mean, literally given people shirts off his back, brought people in our home and cared for them. I mean, a heart of gold, and but a little rough around the edges, is what I tell people. He's a big soft teddy bear that's just a little rough. But but during that time frame before he was saved, that brought in a whole new thing into my home and my life. I've got this guy who, I knew, but I didn't know that well. And while he was dating my mom, we would play video games together. And then after they got married, he was telling me to get off my video games. Like, wait a minute. Yeah. What happened here, And so, of course, then it brought a lot more cursing in our home, and there were some fights and different things like that. And then my dad ended up getting remarried around the same time. And that was a bad relationship there too. And so he was still drinking and on drugs at the time, but I was around him a little more. And this is about the time I'm entering fifth to seventh grade, right? And then seventh grade, I'm about 13 years old, and I'm getting taught evolution. And I went to my church, and I love my mom, but she's always said, like, you've been smarter than me for years. I started asking these questions about evolution. And I said, I was told in Sunday school and in church that man and dinosaurs walk the earth together, but they say millions of billions of years. What I was told was, well, the Bible says it, we believe it, and that's it. I'm sorry, he's got a PhD and you're a country bumpkin. I'm out, and so I really ran from my faith at the time and followed after the world. 13 to, even into my young Marine Corps years, 23, 24 years old, up to that 2012 timeframe. I did what young men do: drugs, alcohol, women. High school was full of that. Fortunately, when I met my wife, a lot of that stopped. But we were together since junior year of high school. So my sowing wild oats, if you will, was even before that. And that's something, just to bring out to anyone who experiences fatherlessness or absentee fathers in the home, or even anything of that nature. It's very common. I'm sure you've seen it. Many have. Like, the kids go wild. And I'm one of them that did. Yeah. And by God's grace, I never ended up doing anything that caused me, permanent damage. But I've definitely got the scars of the memories and things like that. But often have to thank God for His grace and forgiveness, and His willingness to choose to forget what I did. Because even when I remember it, I'll hold guilt over my head that God doesn't. And I found freedom in a lot of that, but it still comes back from time to time. So that was kind of my upbringing there. Dad was on drugs and alcohol for a long period of time. My stepdad, not a bad guy, just a lot of anger and some stuff would come out in arguments and stuff. So it wasn't a great home life. It wasn't bad. I wasn't abused. I was very blessed. I was never abused or anything of that nature. But I went wild because I had no one there no one was really guiding me. I think they would have been if I pursued after it. But I was really pushing against it. And then in such a way that I don't know that anyone could have reined me in at the time. You look back and say, well, if I had known this or that, no, probably not. I was doing whatever I wanted when I wanted. So that's kind of my upbringing and stuff there.
Wow. Yeah. It's a powerful story. So was there ever a time that you lived with your dad, or is it all you just lived with your mom the whole time? Did you ever move once you got married or anything? Did you ever go back and forth?
Yeah, she had full custody. But I would go over there from time to time, stay on weekends. I don't remember staying through school or anything of that nature. Because again, it was like second to fifth grade, maybe sixth grade. I don't remember seeing my dad much. I do have a couple memories, and he was intoxicated during those times. And then middle school, I did see him more. And I've got a story I write about in my book, but I haven't got full permission from him on it yet. And so, I'll wait to share that. But it was middle school is kind of when we got back together, and then got in trouble one time in high school. Cops had to come to a party I was at, and they said, you got to call your parents. I did not call my mom. I called my dad, and he got me out of that one. But that's a whole other thing. So no, I never lived with him. And so absolutely 100%. His only stipulation was, I'll tell him you can stay, but you got to come see me. I'm like, okay, I'll see you tomorrow.
Yeah. Wow. Okay. So speaking to the fatherless generation out there, if you're talking to fatherless guys, maybe young adults, one of the things that I appreciate what you said was how you've overcome your past and the past mistakes you've made. And speak more on that. How did you do that? Because sometimes people have a lot of times people have a hard time overcoming their past, and they think they keep being reminded of the mistakes they made, and it just continues to mess with their head. What's some things that you would recommend doing to overcome that?
So I think going to the Marine Corps was my way of proving I wasn't my past and I wasn't my upbringing. I got enough of a rebel in me that I would look at some people and say, I don't ever want to be that. And that was a driving force for me for a long time. And so going to the Marine Corps, I was going to the best of the best, the few, the proud, the Marines. They really don't humble you there. I mean, it's a humbling experience, but as soon as you're humbled, they build you right back up with the pride of being a Marine. And so I did that. That was something that was kind of proving myself over and over. And I found myself in this vicious cycle of just I always had to be the best, always had to be the best. And I still have some of that, just my own drive and ambition, but I think it's more tailored now with less disappointment or things of that nature. And obviously more gospel driven, more driven towards things of the Lord than, my own personal ambition. But, so the Marine Corps was part of my escape from that and kind of proved to myself who I was. And, never wanted to be that. Now, that didn't stop me from, participating in, illegal activities when I was younger. The Marine Corps was my blessing in that I couldn't do something, because if I had I went to military jail, and I'm not made for jail anyway, much less a military jail. And so, but then, excuse me, the forgiveness of my father, I think, really helped. And that happened, I think it happened later high school years, maybe right before I went to the Marine Corps. It happened early in the Marine Corps. But when I was able to just say, Dad, like, hey, because he was apologizing for something, and said, Dad, listen, I forgive you. Like, let's just go forward. And I've kind of always had that mentality of just, let's move forward from this. Let's take it, let's build from it, let's grow and do something else. And so, I want to try to answer your question. I'm trying to remember the second half of it. Talking to the fatherless generation. That's what I'd say. Number one, don't be a victim of your circumstances. Be a victor in Christ through everything you do. I wouldn't have said it that way 15 years ago, but I'm saying it to you now. And that the circumstances that you have in life, whether there's a bad father in your home, whether there's no father in your home, whether your mother is gone. I mean, whatever your situation is, you can either be a victim or a victor. And if we choose to be a victim, we're going to sit in our past forever and allow it to impact us. But if we make the decision that my life will go on, and my life will honor those it needs to honor. Maybe if someone passed unexpectedly in the loss of a parent, or forgive me, this is a rebel in me, and I don't know if a pastor should be given this counsel. My life will be better than, because I am not where I came from. And honestly, if we direct that I am not where I came from because of Christ, then I think that can be healthy as long as it's done well. Because that's really now my passion and drive comes from the desire of reaching into people's lives that either been where I'm at or where I was, and helping them go to, where I am and where I want to be. Because you mentioned success earlier. And we use it in Men After God. We help men achieve success with a thriving faith and family. Man, success is one of those things that from the outside, everybody goes, wow, that guy's successful. But the person who is successful usually sits back and goes, I'm nowhere near it. And that's really where I am. I'm definitely in pursuit of Christ and failing daily, but it's part of the journey. And so the biggest thing I would say to a fatherless generation, and to anyone who hears this, if you know someone that's fatherless, do not point that out to them all the time. Oh, it's so sad that your dad's gone. It's sad that your dad's not a part of your life. If your dad was this, if your dad was that, quit blaming the father. Because if the father isn't actively participating into the home, yes, he's made a mistake. Yes, it's going to have an impact. But unless you empower the individual that's been infected by someone else's decisions, you're going to allow them to continue to sit underneath victimhood because of someone else's decisions. So we've got to raise people up and elevate them and show them what they're capable of. The Marine Corps did that. Corporal Summers did that when he got me to take a college class. I thought I was an idiot. I graduated high school, 6th in my class from the bottom. Now I've graduated with a Bachelor's of Science from Embry-Riddle Aeronautical University, cum laude, and I've graduated with a 3.8 and a Master's of Religious Education and Biblical Studies, and I've got about a 3.8, 3.9 in my doctoral studies right now. But I never would have done it if someone hadn't elevated me up to it. So I don't say all that to brag. I say that glory to God, number one, and number two, it's because someone saw something in me and they helped draw it out. And so if you're trying to impact a fatherless generation, find their gifts, strengths, and abilities God has given them and draw that out, but don't continually point back to what put them in their situation. Point them forward to who Jesus is going to take them out of their situation.
That's so good. And as we continue this, we have a few minutes left, and I want to kind of finish with this question. As we go to churches, we hear this question from different guys that are becoming dads. They grew up without a dad, and they're like, "How do I be a dad when I didn't have one?" And so you're doing that. You're with your show you have, and you're teaching men. Speak to the man that is about to be a dad, about to be a husband, and give them some advice. What would you say to them about, hey, this is how to take what you didn't have and make it something?
Oh man, you know what? I tell you what, Sean, when you find the guy that can answer that question well, point him in my direction. Because I'm going to tell you that is a struggle. And I find myself, I've been told this, and then I finally saw it one day, but I parent like a Marine, and it's not always a good thing. Because that was my upbringing. That was when I transferred into adulthood. Right. And I didn't have, I say bad. Someone asked me one time, Sean, and I know we're running low on time. They asked me, do you have any traumatic experiences in your life? I said, well, they might be traumatic to you, but for me, it was just my life. So when I say like I didn't have bad parents, nobody abused me, nobody did anything like that, but they weren't necessarily always involved. And so what I'd say to the parent that didn't have a parent or didn't have a dad and is getting ready to be a father or is going through that, number one, you're never going to think you're doing it right. I've never met a dad who looks at me and says, man, I just got this thing down. Like, no, I don't. I have no clue what I'm doing. There's some guys I see just doing it so well, and I'll talk to them, and even they had parents, and they're experiencing the same thing. So number one, get over the guilt of doing it right, and do your best. Something God showed me in the last year or so, and you can do this with your kids and with anyone. As fathers, we like to provide. We like to make sure everything works well. Bills are paid, vacations are taken, and we want to do a lot of stuff we want to do a lot of stuff for our kids, our spouse, and everything like that. We want to do a lot of stuff for Jesus. Jesus never called us to do things. He called us to abide. He called us to be with him. Doing things for Jesus and doing things with Jesus. Doing things for Jesus and doing things with Jesus are two different things. Doing things for your kids and doing things with your kids are two different things. Do more with your kids than you do for your kids, and the relationship will be greater in the end than if you just pursue what you can do for them. The same with following Christ. And I'm learning this lesson right now, so I can't go much further in detail than that.
I love that. That's so good. Such great advice. As we wrap up, just tell us where we can find you, where they can find your show, and how they can reach out to you, social media, wherever you're at.
Sure. Appreciate it, Sean. Yeah. So Men After God podcast is on all your major podcasting platforms. We have a Facebook page, facebook.com/Men After God podcast. Our groups I mentioned earlier, facebook.com/group/Men After God. And then that's the easiest way to get in touch with us there. Our church, Liberty Baptist, you're always welcome to follow us there, share it, and tell people about it, especially from New England. And then be on the lookout. We are excited because, as I mentioned earlier, the After God movement starts with Men After God. And then there's two other branches that I was praying over for the next 3 to 5 years, but I think God's going to allow us to open a sister branch in Women After God. Very excited about that within the next 12 months. And so we're praying over that.
That is awesome. We'll have those links in the show notes. So great to have you, Dustin. Thanks for being with us today.
Hey, Sean. Thank you, man. Y'all have a great day.
Hey, thanks for checking out this episode of Let's Talk About Fatherlessness. We want to now challenge you to take the next step by either starting a single mom community group in your church or with your ministry, or by joining our network of God is My Dad churches and ministries. Isn't it a great experience to be able to start a single mom community group?
Yeah, and it's just, if you talk to single moms, a lot of times what they'll tell you is the one thing they're lacking is that community, just a group that they can go in and they know there's no judgment. Everyone may not have the same situation. Everyone doesn't know what they're going through, but they can go in and they know there's no judgment. And it takes that kind of that restriction and that wall down for them so that they can share and then that they can grow in Christ.
And our single mom community groups are a wonderful ministry. And if your church can start one, we'd love to have you. We can help you get set up. We have the curriculum and all the resources you need. If you can't start one, we'd love to have you start by joining our network of churches and ministries, our God is My Dad network of churches and ministries, where you can get your church or your ministry on our map, and people can find you and find your ministry in your church so that they can get plugged into your church or ministry locally. So check that out. You can find all these resources at lifefactors.org. We have books, we have all kinds of content on there at lifefactors.org. Check it out today.